explained to me that the major cause is the huge stress that their body is going through because of the high milk production.
Food problems are very common with dairy cows. The same problems like beef cattle have, or no, we're talking about the many problems with dairy cows. Why dairy cows have so many problems? Because there's more stress. We expect more to them.
I see these animals being bred every year to produce ever more milk, which is putting their bodies under strain. They get higher rates of lameness. It's already 30% amongst British dairy cattle, and it's a very painful condition in the later stages.
I showed the footage to vet Roger Blowy, who I met on the farm in Gloucestershire.
It would be unusual to find a dairy herd without any lameness. Like common cold in man, the two factors that probably most affect lameness in cattle is first of all calving, and secondly the amount of standing. Being milked frequently means that they have to spend all the time on concrete. A dairy cow that's giving a lot of milk probably has to spend 6 or 8 hours a day standing to feed.
On the Welsh farm, things were taking a darker turn. The undercover worker sees shovels and other implements used on cows. On other occasions, workers were seen punching cows. And even putting the boot in.
I can say that I've seen horrible things. The video did not cover it all, absolutely. I missed many events that I would be happy to capture.
Sometimes dairy cows lose their footing and can't get up. When this happens, there's a race against time to get them back on their feet before they suffer permanent nerve damage. It's especially challenging in a confined space like the milking parlour.
Instead of letting her calm down, maybe try to pull her in a gentle way. The first reaction was to kick her forcefully in the flank, in the stomach. The second reaction of other worker was to kick her in the back.
Look at it, goodness.
And the consensus was that to pull her tail forcibly is the right thing to do.
The kicking only stopped once the cow was finally freed.
What's your view?
That what he was doing was totally unnecessary and unwarranted.
Yeah.
You would certainly do something to encourage her to stand up. I might have just sort of given her foot given her foot a poke or something like that.
Right.
So I can see the extreme frustration to the people that are there because the cow is down and the cow clearly has to be moved.
They're kicking that cow pretty hard at the moment. It's abuse, it's inhumane. This should not be occurring.
Other methods were also used for dealing with downed cows. A hip hoist can be used on farms to help cows regain their footing.
Correct procedure is that the hip hoist is applied to the hip bones gently, carefully and with skill and with a light touch.
When the workers had to move a stricken cow to an area where there was straw underfoot to help keep her upright, this light touch seemed to be absent.
The cow's meant to be raised to the point where it can just stand, and then the hip hoist is supposed to be immediately released and the cow's supposed to be supported gently on either side.
The cow was struggling to balance herself. She was just banged her head over the concrete again and again, howling, while the workers were laughing.
This poor cow's having its face dragged along the concrete. Oh my God, it's going up into here. That's terrible. That's very obviously abuse. The worker is joking about it. What is not supposed to happen is the cow's raised into the air using a hip hoist, which can significantly damage the bone and the soft tissues, causing further trauma. Not to imagine the amount of fear this cow must be enduring.
Farm vet Roger Blowy had a rather different take on the footage.
What's being done there is, in my experience, would be fairly common practice.
Is there not a potential to damage the hips?
I suppose there must be a potential, but it's done so commonly without any damage.
And isn't it also likely that the cow's in some distress or pain when that's happening?
Absolutely, definitely, yeah. Yeah, definitely. So what you have to balance is the stress and the pain of that over a short period of time to be put into a nice environment versus the alternative, which would be being left where she was.
When animals are beyond help, the law requires them to be put out of their suffering promptly. But that didn't always happen on this farm. This cow was severely ill and in need of attention. A vet who was treating another cow at the farm was asked about it.
And you see the other cow, the killed one, and the one who's lying in body as well. Yeah.
The vet that was present acknowledged that they are suffering and advised prompt euthanasia.
But instead of paying the vet to euthanize the dying cow there and then, the cow was left until a slaughterman could put it down the following day.
I don't think she's a lot of suffer from this either. The guy told me that cow seems to be in pain, yeah. The one that's like, when slaughterman can come straight away, then it's there, but if he comes the day after, then it's not fair. Yeah.
It means she was suffering almost 24 hours from the time we saw her.
I would have expected them to have got the vet to have euthanized the cow, but even more surprising, I would have expected there would be somebody on farm who was capable of doing that sort of thing, so soon as reasonably possible.
We took the undercover footage from the farm in Wales to a barrister who's handled many animal abuse prosecutions.
She was suffering.
Yeah.
So that's hitting
Quite.
the cow with a shovel.
Yes, quite clearly, that would constitute an offence, and we would prosecute something like that. It's basically an assault against the animal.
It's quite a hard watch, that actually, isn't it?
It is. There's no good reason for kicking the animal while it's stricken. It's going to cause, especially to the stomach, some unnecessary suffering and pain.
So a likely breach of the law.
Yes. A hip hoist is a valuable tool for a farmer to use to get a stricken cow back up on its feet. The circumstances in which it's being used here are quite inappropriate.
Is it likely to be something that might be prosecuted?
Potentially, yes.
What's your view overall of what you've seen?
We've got a number of different types of criminal offences. It's frankly not an acceptable way to deal with cattle.
We wrote to the owner of the Welsh farm. His lawyers told us if workers had punched and kicked animals, a disciplinary process would start immediately. They say the farm continues to invest with particular regard to animal health and welfare.
Traceable, safe and unprepared.
The UK dairy industry says it has some of the highest animal welfare standards in the world. As well as government regulations, 95% of dairy farms in the UK are signed up to an industry-run assurance scheme called Red Tractor.
Just look for the Red Tractor label.
Where Red Tractor comes in is that is a voluntary assurance scheme, and that is one that as dairy farmers we would sign up to, and that is a scheme with an add-on, so it goes over and above the regulations that the country sets on us.
The farm in Wales is Red Tractor assured, but for most commercial dairy farms, Red Tractor's animal welfare standards are considered to be the industry minimum.
For us, it's almost a background noise, so it's a pretty low bar. It's not a big issue for us one way or another.
Who's driving increasing standards in welfare in the industry then?
The dairies, that they're feeling pressure from who they're selling milk to make sure that they can get traceability and accountability from the farms that are supplying that.
Processors or dairies who demand extra standards from the farms who supply them tend to pay them more for their milk. That money can then be used by the farmers to enhance welfare standards even further.
Farms that are receiving a better price have got a much better opportunity to progress quicker in terms of meeting their aspirational animal health and welfare targets. Even just one extra penny on a litre will enable a farmer to upgrade or take advantage of new technology that's out there to make sure that the cows are getting the best care that they can.
So where does the milk from the cows on the Welsh farm go?
If I want to get cow or milk, where it goes to? Fresh waste. You're talking about fresh waste. Fresh waste, yeah.
Freshways supplies a lot of milk into the service industry, including to big brands such as British Airways and Costa Coffee.
Historically, Freshways has been one of the lower payers. They are taking advantage of the contract they've got with their farmer and passing all too often the price pressures back down the line onto that farmer who's supplying them. And it's something that as an industry we're trying to stop happening.
We've analysed the amount that Freshways has paid farmers over the last 7 years, and they've regularly been one of the lower payers. What that means is, for example, for a farm that produces 2 million litres of milk a year, if they've been selling to one of the 5 best paying processors instead of Freshways, they'd have made around £240,000 more over that 7-year period.
Freshways says it has a track record of paying suppliers a competitive milk price and has been paying a leading price to suppliers since last October. It says Red Tractor aligns with its own expectations of welfare standards. Red Tractor says its scheme is the bedrock of progressive farming in Britain, and animal welfare is core to all that we do.
We wanted to find out how recently the Welsh farm has been inspected, so we contacted Red Tractor and 2 government inspectorates, the Food Standards Agency and the Animal and Plant Health Agency.
After we got in touch, all 3 carried out unannounced inspections at the farm. Red Tractor would only say that the farm is currently a member of its assurance scheme. We understand that neither of the government agencies identified any animal welfare concerns. Animal Equality has reported the Welsh farm to the local council and asked it to investigate their findings. Last year, Parliament approved a new law which increases the maximum prison sentences for those abusing animals from 6 months to 5 years. The government is also trying to introduce another piece of legislation, the Animal Sentience Bill.
Really important that we recognise that they are sentient, that they've got the capacity to experience positive and negative emotions, that they may have strong social bonds with one another.
In Scotland, farmer David Finlay says he's faced hostility for doing things differently.
We're seen as fairly toxic by the industry now. There's very few dairy farmers will speak to me, very few, and I'll probably be related to most of them. If we can make this work, then the question obviously is, why isn't everyone doing it?
Critics of intensive milk production believe only customers can drive change.
Consumer pressure is so important because ultimately, unfortunately, money talks, and the industry will do whatever is necessary to ensure that people buy their products.
Farmers themselves acknowledge that even the fundamentals of dairy farming, like separating newborn calves from their mothers, may have to change.
This is where the majority of research is going at the minute, and who knows, in 20 to 30 years' time, it may not happen. The key thing is, as an industry, if that's what the consumer wants, that's what we will provide.
As consumers, we've all got used to cheap milk. Over the past 10 years, the price has barely gone up at all.
We must learn from the egg industry. People are prepared to pay a few more pennies to have the free-range eggs. That is coming with dairy. Some people will pay additional money for their milk and dairy products.
Milk is far too cheap. Sometimes I look at the cows and think it's an insult to see it being sold at the rate that it is. it would be nice to have an option to think, yes, I will buy this milk at a higher price because I know that it's guaranteeing those standards.
If the price of contented farmers and their cows is a few extra pence on a litre of milk, the question is, are we willing to pay more?